Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 216 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 72 of A Storm of Swords, that's Jaime 9.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we're going to provide some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing well. I raced around this evening to get here as close to on time as I could.
Your daughter on the stage? How'd it go?
She was. It was really good. It was a good production. They're doing Alice in Wonderland.
Who's she playing?
The Duchess.
Oh my God, typecast.
The one who says, and the moral of that is about 10 different times. So yeah, she did a good job. They all did a good job. So I've only got 3 more times this week to watch it. We're Stacey and I are splitting up some of the shows, and we're not going to Friday night or Saturday night. So I've only got 3 myself, and she's got 3 herself. So
if you watch like a football game on your phone or listen to a podcast, will other parents frown at you, do you think?
That might be frowned upon in that establishment. I feel like there's a chance. Unfortunately, I bought seats in the front row of every show that I'm going to. I should have done it for tonight's show and then the back row for everything else. I'm going to start reciting lines up there.
So you've seen in the notes what I've got written there.
I do. I'm very curious what this means.
You've heard of this show, Welcome to Wrexham?
I have, yes.
Well, my little sister was in an episode.
Nuh-uh.
I mean, just in the background, but she was there.
Well, still.
Yeah, it was like,
that's
hey,
cool.
That's my sister. Because what happened was, it's season 2, episode 5. They're talking to this guy who owns and manages a rival club to Wrexham, Dorking Wanderers, I think they're called. And
okay.
He's got a very London accent. Very strong London accent. And the clip they show is he's at a game, and I looked at it, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's Oldham. I recognise that. It's Oldham. And he's running up the steps. It's clearly pre-game. He's clearly been down on the field shouting at the players to do something. Now he's running up the steps to sort of go back to the changing rooms kind of thing. And an Oldham fan intercepts him and says in a fantastically Oldham accent, he's like, hey, you know who you remind me of? And the guy, because he's got a real London accent, says, nah, mate, who do I remind you of, innit? You know, I'm caricaturing these accents, but... And the guy says, well, he says, Del Boy Trotter, which won't mean anything to anyone, but he's sort of famously London accented British sitcom character. And the Dorking manager, it's slightly offensive, but it's not terribly offensive. I mean, he's just basically saying, you sound like him. That's what he's saying, you know. But he's a good-natured guy. He says, nah, mate, I'm more like Alf Garnett. And that's another different London sitcom character, which wouldn't mean anything to Americans. I don't know why they put this clip in there, to be honest, you know. Like, but just when that bit is happening, there are two... I don't know the American word for this. Stewards, I would call them. People who sort of show you to your seat and are there for safety, wear high-vis jackets.
Oh, yeah. Right. Sure.
They are sort of in the foreground and the bottom left of the screen. And just between them, you see a person standing up wearing the orange cap that my sister always wears at soccer matches. And she's facing back. She's facing right into this. I was like, that's my little sister. I told her she could not have cared less.
She didn't tell you this was happening? She didn't know?
Well, what happened was, as soon as I saw it was Oldham, I was like, oh, I wonder if Lucy's there, because I know where she sits, and she sits right there. So I started looking for her, and sure enough, there she was. She said, God, it took me like 30 times to find myself. I'm like, how blasé are you about being starring alongside Deadpool?
Right? Man, your family is all over the
but the
TV
common
waves
theme
these days.
Is that attitude, right? So my brother was on a Channel 4 show this week called Help We Bought a Village, and I have not seen the episode yet. I've seen a little teaser for it where he's saying, "Oh, we'll knock this out, and yeah, I don't know, probably it'll hold. Maybe we can get some dispensable to stand on that thing." So it's quite funny. I mean, they chose that wisely for the clip, you see.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it yet. So on my siblings thread, I'm like, well, and my other sister is like, it was okay. She said the farm looked nice.
Wow.
I'm like, what is wrong with you people?
What?
I mean,
seriously, they're just too comfortable with fame, I guess. Already, they're already over it.
50 hours ago now. I still don't know if I was in it. No, so I was interviewed for that TV show. No one has mentioned whether or not we made it to the show.
Yeah, you and I were discussing it yesterday, trying to figure out how to watch it. I assumed by now Rob or someone on your side of the family would have provided a means for you to watch it.
Well, at least tell us whether we were in it. Would have been interesting
that's
to
step
know.
one. Sure, I'll give you that.
I'm monitoring the Channel 4 app, which is at least showing which episodes are available, but you need a British IP address to watch them. So, and his episode,
okay,
it's weird because they've watched it, so it is aired, but according to when I see the ones come up, the one that was aired on the day they said it aired doesn't appear to be him. It's some random other person.
No, it's the guy with the beard and the missing tooth, right? Yes, unless Rob has changed his appearance drastically since I've last seen him.
It seems there's like a week disconnect, a 1 week disconnect between the TV show, but it literally says aired on. So I don't know. I don't understand what's happening.
Right.
It could all be a lie. Maybe it's not actually happening. But anyway, if you get a chance to see Help, We Bought a Village, watch for the episode that my brother's in. It's season 2, episode 20-something. I still don't know. Couldn't tell you. And my family, they're so disinterested.
Does the episode have a name?
I don't know. But I know it's going to feature wheelchair access. That was what the trailer showed. They interviewed the owner who's in a wheelchair, and she said, I really wanted to be able to come, so I really wanted to commit to making it accessible to everyone. So that's clearly the emphasis of the show.
I saw that bit. Okay. I saw that clip. I did not realize that was going to be the
You saw that clip, so did you see... Because my brother was in that same clip. He was inside a building, and there was a vertical pole. He says, we're going to take that out now.
I think the clip was on their Facebook page, on the Breakfast Facebook page. I think
on
it
my
was
brother's
literally just
Facebook
of her talking.
Page. I see.
Yes.
Yeah, so
yes.
Terribly exciting, and I am related to a bunch of people who simply don't get... My elder sister... All right, this is the one who... So my younger sister was blasé about Wrexham. My elder sister is blasé about this. She seems to actively not want it to be on television. It's like she... Exactly.
She's trying to stop it.
She's racing around buying copies of it so no one else can see it. It's like, what is wrong with you? I mean, it's not like we're going to get famous off it, but it's great for the business because, I mean, it's going to be, a million people in Britain are going to see it and be like, oh, it's nice,
Right, absolutely. That's fantastic advertising right there. When you were doing your interview, was there an opportunity to work in the Ghosts of Harrenhal podcast?
You know me, Mackelly. I'm always thinking of those things. Pretty sure I failed abysmally.
Did they say, and so what do you do as what do you enjoy in your life? And you're like, soccer.
Nothing really.
Yes. And
that would be very on brand with my family.
Well, it's really neat. I want to watch it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to or not, but I would like to watch it.
carried the first season, so if PBS picks up the second season, we should be able to watch it eventually.
Okay. Good stuff.
Well, enough of this frivolity. Let's get down to business. How did we leave Jaime Lannister? Last we saw of Jaime, he was getting to know his Kingsguard, a collection he wouldn't have chosen himself. He tries to impose some order and questions Loras Tyrell's certainty that Brienne murdered Renly. He charges the younger man with questioning her and being a fair judge, and if he finds her guilty, then Jaime will punish her. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
Feels like a bit of a gamble, playing fast and loose with Brienne's life here.
Well, I will say, and this will come up in the discussion, given how many people are unable to change their minds about their first instincts on things, it's a big gamble. Because nobody else in King's Landing seems to give anyone a second chance.
It is. That is definitely true. Anyway, so Jaime is attending the small council meeting where the new king, propped up on pillows, is signing various papers. Jaime is bored witless. He's also sore all over, having sparred with Adam Marbrand to test whether he can fight left-handed. The answer is an emphatic no. Adam is an old friend and will be discreet, but Jaime is troubled about his future. Jaime believes that the gift his father gave him of a new Valyrian steel sword is mocking, but his uncle Kevin assures him that it was heartfelt. Jaime takes his leave, putting Meryn Trant in charge of the king's well-being.
Outside, he bids farewell to Steel Shanks Walton, who is headed back to the north with the gratitude of the Lannisters and a new bride for the newly legitimised Ramsay Bolton. None other than Arya Stark.
What?
The kid is northern, but seems older than Arya ought to be. She plays the part, though, reminding Sir Jaime that they met when he visited Winterfell. He's not certain, but he's pretty doubtful, although he recognises that nobody in the north is going to gainsay it. Anyone whose opinion might matter and who would have known Arya is dead.
Wow. So that is quite a... Arya was going to pop up somewhere. I guess she popped up here in King's Landing.
Yeah, and I think... Jaime might not be certain. I think we can be fairly confident that's not the real Arya.
Not the real Arya. Anyway, he steps over the bloody patch where the Mountain killed the stable boy during his duel with Oberyn Martell. Boris Blunt was supposed to keep the crowd back, but he's pretty useless. And Clegane himself was to blame, but he's paying for it now. His poisoned wounds fester, even maggots won't touch it. Boiling wine has helped, but he fights for his life, screaming in agony. Tywin has told Pycelle in no uncertain terms that Gregor will recover, so that he can put him to death for the murder of Elia Martell and her children, in order to further distance himself from this whole fiasco and to help rebuild the relationship between the Lannisters and the Martells.
Jaime arrives back at the White Sword Tower. Blunt and Sir Balon are asleep, otherwise all is quiet. Jaime's tired too, but his sister is waiting for him. She looks beautiful and wants Jaime to intercede with their father. She doesn't want to be sent away. Jaime reminds her that he's on the outs with the old man too. She wants to stay for Tommen. The young king is scared and confused by the prospect of marrying Marjorie, something the Tyrells are insisting on. Jaime's fine with it.
Cersei reminds him that Tommen is his son. My seed, maybe, but you never let me be father. To keep him safe. Jaime reminds her of other things he was forced to do, including Bran's defenestration. Cersei points the finger at Jaime. If he'd gone hunting with the rest, this wouldn't have happened. Both recount that accusations had since been thrown about the catspaw. But both still deny it. Cersei recounts that Robert, in front of the children, loudly said it would have been better if Bran had died. Jaime realizes then that Joffrey was probably the one, desperate for his father's affection.
Jaime recounts how Tyrion nearly died for that dagger, and then muses that if he, Tyrion, also concluded that Joffrey was to blame, that would have given him a motive for the murder of Joffrey. Cersei recounts the horror she witnessed as her son died in her arms. For this reason, she wants to stay with Tommen. Jaime says that Tywin won't listen. He would if you left the Kingsguard, but Jaime will not do that, not even to save her from having to remarry. He again suggests being open with their relationship. She again refuses this as madness.
But she does make advances on him, and Jaime refuses, saying, "This is not the place." She gets mad and questions his manhood. They next spar over Tyrion's guilt. She eventually leaves, claiming to be the only real son Tywin's ever had. He sends Blunt to fetch Sir Loras and to bring Brienne. They duly arrive. Loras is a decent kid, and he concedes that she could be innocent. He can't understand how Stannis did it, but there's enough truth to her story to absolve her. Loras is then sent away.
Jaime and Brienne then talk. He tells her about the false Arya headed north. Jaime thinks that Sansa must have killed Joffrey, and Tyrion is covering for her. Brienne, having never met Sansa, is absolutely sure she couldn't possibly have. He presents Brienne with his new sword and asks her to name it Oathkeeper and to use it to go find Sansa and to save her. He confirms that it is made from the steel that once made up ice. She can't understand why he would want the person he's so sure murdered his own son protected. Sansa is his last chance at honour. Brienne leaves, and he writes up his exploits in the White Book. There's still 3/4 of a page left when he reaches the present.
He's got a long way to go to get to Barristan the Bold.
Yeah. So, I've said it before, but I really like King's Landing chapters the best. Maybe this is why I enjoyed House of the Dragon, because it was, King's Landing focused.
Oh, very much.
Yeah.
Yes. King's Landing, Dragonstone, and Driftmark were about a little bit in the Stepstones, but so much of it focused at
King's
but
all
Landing.
Of that was part of the same story. You know what I mean? It was just more laser focused. I mean, I said this at the time than Game of Thrones could ever be. There's a lot of meat in this chapter. A lot.
There really is.
We skipped over the things that Tommen was signing, but they were very consequential. The things he was signing. So
they were, and I thought they were. I thought it was a sly way of filling us in on the political progress and development in the realm.
Right.
Just like almost like bullet points.
Exactly. We have it as a bullet list, but that's basically how the book did it too. So
right.
There were attainders against Edmure and Brynden Tully, stripping them of their lands and titles, and Riverrun was to be given to Aemon Frey and his wife Gemma. Help me out with what was Gemma's maiden name?
I believe it was Lan something. Lannister, maybe?
There we go. How interesting, yes.
Yes. And Aemon, so Aemon does get Riverrun here, but he's not going to get Lord Paramount of the Trident, at least not at the moment, because Littlefinger was given that title when he became Lord of Harrenhal. So he doesn't get all of the Tully strength and power.
Yeah.
Just Riverrun, which isn't bad.
Yeah. The Lannisters are setting up future problems there, though, because once Aemon establishes himself in Riverrun, he's going to be like, well, hang on a second. I really ought to be the Lord Paramount of the Trident.
Well, one thing that's noteworthy about this is that Aemon is now the heir. Since the death of Stevron Frey, Aemon is now the heir to Lord Walder. So he's chosen Riverrun rather than his home castle of the twins. I guess he'd rather not have to wait it out for the twins, like a castle in the hand.
Yes. They probably haven't asked him. He might prefer the twins. He might appoint someone else to go to Riverrun.
That, I guess he could still do that, yes. Meanwhile, Edmure is in the twins because last we had heard anyway, he was still being held hostage by the Freys.
Right. He was the only person we know wasn't murdered at the Red Wedding.
Yeah. I think we also maybe heard that Mark Piper was taken hostage.
Okay.
Possibly in the previous Jaime chapter, maybe it was. But so Edmure out, Aemon in, and none of this really means a whole lot because at the moment the Blackfish is held up inside Riverrun and he's under siege.
Yes.
So
one other reason for Aemon to say, why don't someone else go get Riverrun?
Until they can fish Brynden out of there. Thank you. But the one of the list we've got here, one of the ones I found most intriguing is that Rolf Spicer is given Castamere.
Mm-hmm. Remind the listeners who Rolf Spicer is, if you would.
Rolf Spicer is the uncle to Jane Westerling, Robb Stark's widow.
Indeed.
Yes, so he's been made Lord of Castamere. And it's been a while since there's been a Lord in Castamere. A pretty good long while.
I wonder actually. Oh, because they were the Rains, weren't they? They weren't called the Castameres; they were the Rains. So Castamere gets to keep its name because its name is nothing to do with the Rains, right?
Exactly.
Just the Rains of Castamere. Because I was going to say, if they were called the Casters, it might become Spicermere.
Spicer. That's got a pretty cool ring to it. We're going to hear in the background that there's not a whole lot of castle left in Castamere.
Right. Because have we already told this? Because I thought that this was known, that it was razed to the ground as part of the revenge against the Rains.
It was burned.
Okay.
It's just left a blackened, broken, crumbling structure. But as a reminder to the other Westermen,
right,
to keep it in check.
I wonder if now Tywin is obviously sort of saying, well, I don't need that visual reminder anymore. It's because the song has become so ubiquitous. The whole realm can sing along to the Rains of Castamere. So he doesn't need the castle to be derelict anymore.
That very well could be it. And this reminds me, I was reminded of this conversation that took place way back in Tyrion 3 of A Storm of Swords, when they were at the very first small council table that included the Tyrells and the Red Wines and all the newcomers to the small council. Tyrion finds out that Robb Stark had married, and he says that he's kind of shocked, and he says the crag's not so far from Tarbeck Hall in Castamere. You'd think the Westerlings had ridden past it and taken the lesson. And Tywin's response is, mayhaps they have. They're well aware of Castamere anyway. I can promise you that. And I wonder if that was possible foreshadowing that this reward had already been on the negotiation table.
Yeah. And just as an adjunct to this, another piece of paper that Tommen signs is royal pardons for the Westerlings, welcoming them back into the King's Peace. So, again, it's hard not to think, it's hard to imagine that Tywin would be so forgiving and indeed rewarding to the Spicers and Westerlings, were this not a plan from the get-go to undermine Robb Stark. If they betrayed Tywin and now kind of got out of that jam through lucky happenstance of the Red Wedding, he would not be this forgiving to him.
Right. If he...
Well, okay, but I've said that, I've thought of a reason why he might. To make it look like he planned it.
Oh, yes, so he looks like he is in control.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Whereas if you behead them, it makes it look like they betrayed you. But if you reward them, it looks like you always plan to bring him down from within.
Yeah, you did like I asked you to. Good job.
Yeah. And if the Spicers and Westerlings thought that through, then God bless them, they deserve everything they get, because that is genius. Genius.
We will find out that they are related to a soothsayer, a predictor of the future. So we will find that out at some point. Anyway, one thing I was going to mention is that recall how much Grey Wind disliked Rolf Spicer. That's why Grey Wind wasn't around when Cat met up with Robb at River Run, because he didn't like Rolf Spicer. And because of that, at Cat's behest, Robb sent Rolf Spicer to the Golden Tooth with Martin Lannister for a prisoner exchange for Robert Glover.
Right.
So there's definitely some foreshadowing that was going on here, and it certainly seems like the Spicers and the Westerlings might have been up to they might have been up to some hijinks, I guess. The question that I wonder is whether Jane's coming to Robb and Robb was injured when they were taking the crag, and Jane kind of nursed him back to health, and they fell in love, and they ended up getting married because they had relations with one another. And whether that was intentionally done or if the two kids honestly fell in love,
I don't know. Again, the thing is, I would say that if this is a reward for their treachery, then it was intentional from the get-go. I can't imagine that they would have betrayed Tywin Lannister just because their daughter fell in love with someone. They would have turfed her out.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things. Do you remember when Jane told Cat that she was trying to get pregnant, they were trying pretty hard to get pregnant, and she mentioned that she drinks these potions daily that her mother gives her to try and help her get pregnant, and possibly those were actually doing the opposite. Maybe it was moon tea or tansy tea that she was actually drinking to prevent an unwanted pregnancy. But why would you prevent that
pregnancy? I mean, it feels to me like it's a bargaining chip. If she comes back with a Stark baby, it's a bargaining chip, you know. Maybe you can put that baby into Winterfell as the new Lord or Lady of Winterfell, but a Lannister puppet.
Oh, yes, because he would be heir. If that baby is a boy, he is heir to Winterfell, regardless of what other siblings are alive.
And knowing that child was the part of the family loyal to the Lannisters would be very good for Tywin, I would think. I think he'd be happy to have that. So I don't know.
Yes.
I definitely thought she was giving Tansy tea to the daughter, but now I wonder if it was actually a good idea.
Yeah, and that child wouldn't even be a bastard.
They were married.
Because they were married. So that would be a legitimate heir to Winterfell. Yeah. Now, whether Jane knew about it, I'm not so sure. She must have been one heck of an actress to pull that off, that she was really...
Her elders
being
could definitely
put up to it.
Force that, you know. You go nurse him. Make sure you give him a bed bath. He'll like that.
Right.
Wear your hair up.
Yes. Yeah, and remember, she rode halfway to the twins for one last goodbye with Robb. So it certainly seemed like she was in love. Anyway, we've spent a long time on the Spicers and Westerlings, but I think
we can't help it. We just love young love. So as well, there were pardons for the Bracken, Vance, Mooton, and Goodbrook. They were all Riverlords who bent the knee, right? Nothing much more to say about that.
Yes, yeah. Remember, Tywin I don't remember which chapter, but not that long ago, thought that Jonas Bracken might be a target to bend in the knee. They thought he might be one of the river lords who might be the first to take that knee bend. But there was no mention of Titus Blackwood, so it seems that they're still either siding with Brendan Blackfish Tully or the Starks.
Only one of those families was ever going to do it. The Brackens have done it. Well, we're not.
Right. Well, exactly. Whoever got to it first. There's two branches of the Vances, so it's unclear which Vance. There's Lord Norbert Vance and Carl Vance, so we can't say for sure.
And the last thing he signs is a legitimizing of Ramsay Snow to Ramsay Bolton for his services. So,
yeah, not that long ago, Roose was disowning Ramsay for the trouble with Lady Hornwood.
I don't believe a word out of Roose Bolton's mouth, just so you know.
Definitely no surprise that he was given the title Warden of the North. I think everybody knew that was coming at this point.
Yeah. So back to Jaime. So he's had a spar with Adam Marbrand, and it's gone very, very badly. He's had his backside handed to him, and he's been beaten black and blue with tourney swords. He always worried that he wasn't going to be able to fight left-handed. And the description here is that it's not just learning to swing the left hand, but it's every movement that he makes is now what was natural is completely unnatural now. So he just doesn't see. I mean, you can always practice. 10,000 hours of practice will make you pretty good at just about anything. But he doesn't think he can realistically get into a fight.
Yeah.
But his reputation precedes
right.
him. That'll create some
for a while until someone is like, you know what? Let's see you fight with that left hand. At some point, there'll be another tourney. Will he even be able to joust with only one hand, with his left hand?
Jousting might be easier actually because no, wrong-handed. Yeah, I think you have to joust. I was thinking about that the other day actually. There are certain sports that you have to play right-handed. One of them is field hockey. You have to play field hockey right-handed. You're not allowed to play.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Because the field hockey stick is not two-sided. You're only allowed to use the front face of the field hockey stick, and all of them are right-handed sticks. You can't have a left-handed stick. But jousting, if you wanted to joust left-handed,
you'd be riding alongside that.
Left-handed too. Exactly. So I don't know what the rules are, but it did occur to me.
Only left-handers could joust left-handers,
but
I guess.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of risky for him to be sparring with Adam Marbrand. He mentions, he tells us in his head that they're old friends. They've known each other since they were boys. But as he also mentions, one slip of the tongue, when he's in his cups about how he beats up Jaime Lannister every day or something, could be a big trouble.
And I also wonder how they keep it a secret that they're doing it. I mean, like, because it must be the Tony yards. I mean, do you get everyone to turn their back?
Maybe they go down into the dungeons or something, down into like the Dragon Skull room.
This is sounding awfully homoerotic at this point, I've got to say. Just so you know. So we don't know who the false Arya is, but we do have an excellent candidate. Can we speculate on this? I don't think it's a spoiler to speculate because it's only speculation. Right. Way back in Game of Thrones, Sansa's friend Jane Poole was captured and separated from Sansa because she was filling Sansa's head full of knowledge and horrible stories, but they weren't actually true. She's not been seen since. She is northern, so the general look and accent should hold up. But she was Sansa's age, so as Jaime points out, this kid seems a little bit too old to be.
Yes, that is a problem.
So she's a good candidate. And also, she was present for things like Jaime meeting Arya, so that kind of story holds up.
Yes, she's lived her whole life in Winterfell, basically almost as a Stark daughter.
She knows it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to think of a better candidate.
Absolutely. And
honestly, if Peter Littlefinger Baelish dragged her away to teach her to be Arya, then thank goodness, because we had much worse thoughts in mind when he did.
Yes, we did. And now it all makes sense. Roos's talk of having found Arya and taking her north with him. Remember, we had conjectured that possibly there was a spy in the Brotherhood Without Banners that knew of Arya's presence.
Right.
It turns out, it seems they were just making the whole thing up.
Perfect.
She might be perfect for this role, but I do worry about her in her future role of Mrs. Ramsay Bolton.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. Suddenly being Peter Littlefinger Baelish's cat toy would seem preferable, I feel.
Yeah. That's that scares me. His last marriage was the horrible fiasco with Danella Hornwood, where she ended up dying of starvation locked in a tower cell. So
eating her own fingers, kind of thing. Yes.
Although I will say it's pretty heads up of Jaime to tell Brienne that's not the real Arya before you go chasing after all those Northmen.
Right.
Because she absolutely would have.
So would have, yes, had she heard, but telling her don't fall for that, it's a lie, has saved her a suicidal wild goose chase. So Gregor Clegane did not die in the battle with Oberyn Martell, which is terrible news for Tyrion, by the way. Not that anyone really cared about the details, but Tywin's hopes to nurse him back to execution is very much on ground for Tywin. It's also possibly bad news for Grand Maester Pycelle, because as tough as the mountain is, he's got to be near death's door. I mean, the wounds by themselves, but he's poisoned as well. I mean, you're saying that the things he uses maggots to clean the wounds. They won't even touch it. It's so poisoned. So
I'm not completely sure why they just don't let him die and then send his body and bones back. Yeah. Why do they need to heal him back to health only to kill him?
Yeah. I mean, drag him not healthy and chop his
exactly.
head off,
They won't be able to tell by the bones and the his dead body whether he died from being poisoned or not. And they mention in their conversation, Tywin and Pycelle, that all the Dornishmen are leaving town. So there's
right. I did wonder about that. The quicker you do it, the more witnesses you have.
Yeah.
Do a quick execution. Hey, before you leave,
I guess that's one.
Take that home with you.
There is another interesting development in this conversation here between Pycelle and Tywin, and that is that there's only a token force at Dragonstone, and it's become extra important for Tywin to appease the Martells because he's worried that Stannis is making his way to Sunspear to make a pact with the Martells, and they might just be mad enough to do it.
Exactly.
So,
these Dornishmen are not coming home with good news.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we'll have to see where...
I mean, plus they all heard what the mountain said. when he killed Oberyn. He widely announced that he was guilty of all the crimes.
He did. That's right. He can't go around killing all the Dornishmen. I wouldn't put that past Tywin. Oh, they all died somehow.
So then, after he said goodbye to Steel Shanks, who's taking the false Arya home, he thinks about the mountain, how the mountain's dying. Next, he goes back to the Tower of the White Sword, where the Kingsguard live, and he finds Cersei in his bedroom, and she tries to use the fact that she's being forced to marry someone to get Jaime to leave the Kingsguard, but he won't countenance it. I do wonder, though, in light of the beatdown from Adam Marbrand, if he really should think about it.
Right.
Because the Kingsguard needs to protect the king, and the king is his son. You would think he would want the Kingsguard to be as strong as possible. Now, I think he would make a good Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, but he's useless. So why not admit that, step down, live the life you want to live?
It seems like Jaime could have everything he wants if he would just take it, but he's refusing to. Him and Cersei, he says, if I step down, he'll send me to Casterly Rock. And Cersei's like, me too. We'll be in Casterly Rock together. Right. So they'll be in Casterly Rock together, away from the eyes of their father, who will be remaining in King's Landing. Now, yes, Tywin will probably make them both remarry, but for a time they will be together, at least in Casterly Rock. And as you said, he's just no longer useful. He could be like the Lord Commander Administrator. He does seem like he's got a good head on his shoulders for this kind of thing. But if it comes to fighting,
for recruiting and organizing them, yes, that would I think he'd be good at. Maybe even training them.
Right.
But being one of the seven, you're leaving a hole basically. I will say though, I think one thing I'm noticing is that his self-worth is tied up in that white cloak in a way. You remember the story goes that he only took it. He only became a member of the Kingsguard to stay close to Cersei. Right. That was why he did it. But now he's using it to keep away from Cersei.
Oh, right. Yeah. And
his self-image is tied up in that white cloak, which is also strange because the thing that he's most notorious for is because he was a Kingsguard. Yeah. If he just killed the Mad King Aerys, everyone would be like, oh, well done. But because he was the Kingsguard who did it.
You know what else is not bad for your self-worth is being the heir to Casterly Rock. And you know what you don't need to be the heir of Casterly Rock? 2 hands. Yes.
A right hand?
You could do it with just one hand. It doesn't change much at all.
Can we just take a moment to admire the goal of Jaime? Jaime, I had sex with my sister in the Great Sept of Baelor over the body of our dead incestuous child. And he says this is not the place in his bedroom.
I know. There is some weird standard going on here that I can't quite wrap my head around. He's thinking to himself, we've never done that in this tower, let alone in the Lord Commander's chambers. That's where he lives. That's his bedroom. So,
right. I think.
Yeah. Well, but
this is something we only do in the Queen's bedroom. Okay.
But I feel a little bit like Cersei's kind of talking out both sides of her mouth in the conversation she's having with Jaime. She tells Jaime to leave the Kingsguard to go to Casterly Rock so that they could be together, and then she also begs Jaime not to let Tywin separate her from Tommen. They can't do both because Tommen's not leaving King's Landing. Yeah. So if Cersei wants to stay with him, then she's got to stay in King's Landing. Jaime would go back to Casterly Rock. So, but ultimately it will be a moot point anyway because she knows Tywin's planning on remarrying her, and if Jaime becomes heir to Casterly Rock, he'd have to get married and have children as well to keep the heir flowing.
Yeah. Jaime also expresses to Cersei that he does not believe that Tyrion is guilty, or at least he's uncertain about it, despite the way the 2 trials went, both the by combat and the courtroom both went badly against Tyrion. But he's his brother, and he talked to him, and he was assured that it wasn't true. So
yeah,
you understand why he's...
I find that kind of surprising because Jaime, they're talking about the trial, and Cersei says, calls him, he can go to hell with his lies or whatever, and Jaime says he doesn't lie to me, which sounds like they had a conversation, Jaime and Tyrion, where Tyrion said to him, I didn't do it. And I find it kind of surprising that we haven't been let in on that conversation yet.
Right, because they're both POV characters. We could have had it from either side.
Neither one of them have thought about it. So if it happened off camera, and we haven't been made aware.
Because I just said that earlier, and I realized that wasn't actually in the book. They did have the conversation in the TV show. And when in this confrontation between Jaime and Cersei, he says, he told me he didn't do it, and I believe him. So, we actually, those events did happen on the TV show.
Yeah, it would make sense that they've talked. We've questioned, why have we not seen the two of them interact? It's just odd that we hear it off, that it would happen off camera, and that we wouldn't get it either live or in a flashback. But, I feel like Cersei, I question her sincerity a little bit here. That's the thing. Like with Cersei, you never know. She says all the right things. She tells him that he is her shining star, and she wants to be his wife just as much as he wants her to be his wife, and that she wants no other man in her bed, and she cries, and she, makes a sexual advance at him. And that seems all legitimate, except for that we've seen her use all these kind of things to get what she wants before. So it's hard to say what is legitimate and honest, and what is her trying to get him to do what she wants him to do.
Yeah. Cersei and Jaime solve the mystery of the cat spore, at least to their own satisfaction anyway, I think. I mean, I don't think Cersei wants to believe it, but Jaime was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. This tracks. Basically, because Robert said that he thought that it would be better if Bran had died, and his children heard that one of them acted upon it and arranged for Bran to be killed. And if you peel away layers of evil at its very heart, you'll find Joffrey Baratheon. But there is a sort of tragic element to that too, that, that little psycho would do it just to earn his father's approval. It's just kind of...
Yeah.
And how does it work? How are you going to get approval for that?
I was wondering the same thing. He never took credit for it to our knowledge. Right. So what was the point? Set it up, leave, and never mention it again?
Yeah.
How is that going to get any approval from anybody?
I can't decide if they've jumped to a not necessarily completely convincing conclusion, or if George Martin's just got bored of this part of the story and wants to sort of draw a line under it.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've certainly made plenty of conjectures about who the cat spa with the dagger was. And this one does have some teeth.
For sure.
It fits. It's just the motive is a little bit lacking.
The motive makes a certain amount of sense, but you just don't see how it's going to parlay into the outcome that Joffrey would want from that,
Yes, well said. Yes, exactly. Yes. But, Cersei is the leading candidate, but she just denied it to Jaime.
Keeps denying it.
So it seems really, really unlikely that it was her. So Joffrey's as good as option as we have thus far. Yeah,
for sure. I can't think of anyone better. Unless Peter Baelish just... Okay, this plan is not going to do itself. Let me do it for everyone, I will send the dagger that I will say was Tyrion's.
He's really playing the long game there.
Yeah. So I'll tell you who needed Sir Loras Tyrell as the judge was Tyrion Lannister.
Do tell. Yes,
because
yes, he does.
Sir Loras listened to the evidence and changed his mind. God bless him.
Yeah, the only thing is Tyrion never presented any kind of evidence. He just said, I didn't do it. Right. But maybe that would be enough.
Well, clearly that's what Brienne said. I really loved Renly. I would not have killed him. And Tyrion could have said the same thing. I didn't like him, but he was my nephew.
Yeah. Because, what kind of evidence could Brienne have given in her discussion with Loras?
Presumably she just described what happened. And I think it gets mentioned here, if she was dressing him in his armour, why wait till he was in his armour to skewer him? Do it before. It would be easier.
A lot easier, yes. Before you put that breastplate on, shove a sword through his chest.
But I'm sure that most of it was just her sincerity. We've known she is wailed and moaned about his death ever since it happened.
Yes.
And Loras, all Loras saw was him dead in her arms and her covered in blood, and jumped to a not entirely wild conclusion.
Yeah, unlike Cersei's dubious sincerity, Brienne's sincerity would be really hard to scoff at.
Yeah.
But, and Jaime astutely associates Courtney Penrose's death with Renly's death. There's no obvious correlation. We know that there is.
Oh, we do.
But, it's pretty an astute observation that, another person that was in Stannis' way died suspiciously.
Person who was in Stannis' way and seemed to be obdurate and not changing dies in bizarre circumstances.
Right.
Yeah.
Brienne does try to thank Jaime for his kind words on her behalf. She's kind of touched that Jaime said really nice things about her to Sir Loras. And of course, at that moment, he plays his Kingslayer role and downplays all that he's done and acts like it was no big deal. And he's the Kingslayer who takes his word anyway.
But then he presents her with a hell of a gift.
Yes, he does.
The Valyrian steel sword that was supposed to be the Lannisters' pride and joy for many, many generations to come is given away day 4.
Oh boy, Tywin's not gonna be happy. If Tywin disowned him for previous, just them not agreeing over him stepping down from being in the Kingsguard, this is not gonna help the matter. That's for sure.
Yeah,
but Jaime felt like the gift was mocking,
which is interesting because I it's hard to know. Obviously, there's some level. Why give him that gift at this time? He forged the sword, believing that Jaime would come back whole.
Right.
Would you withhold the sword now just because he didn't?
Either way, it's kind of like a damned if I do, damned if I don't situation.
Yes, for Tywin,
it's like,
yes.
Oh, yeah, I was going to give it to you, but you don't have a right hand, so what was the point of wasting it on you? Or, here's a sword. Oh, I don't have a right hand. Are you mocking me in some way here? So, yeah, I do think it was heartfelt, but I could certainly see how Jaime, who's already upset with his father, could find a way to have a negative impression about it. And, I want to know what Kevin was about to say. Because Jaime says to him...
yeah, he cut him off, didn't he? Yeah.
He says, he says it was a mocking gift. And Kevin says, the gift was heartfelt. It was encourage you to... And Jaime cuts him off and says, what, grow a right hand? It wasn't to encourage you to what? What was he going to say? What would he be wanting to encourage you to keep your chin up, Buttercup? Like, what?
to pick your teeth between meals.
Encourage you to step down from the Kingsguard?
Right, yeah. That is an interesting question. But I also say that Brienne is very right to question why Jaime would do this, because it's one thing to free her to try to fulfill her oath, but then to advise her, as he did about the false Arya, to arm her with a priceless gift, and then to charge her with saving the person that he's just said is clearly the culprit in the murder of his own son. That is an awful lot he's just done in one fell swoop.
It really is, yes. His insistence on keeping the oath that he made to a now dead Catelyn Stark is pretty commendable.
Right.
Even... She says to him, why? Why would you do this? You think this young lady killed your son? And he thinks to himself, because he deserved to die. And then he says out loud, Sansa is my last chance at honor. So, it's a long way from the man who pushed Bran out the window.
Right. But also
Game of Thrones.
Just like his refusal to tell anyone why he killed Aerys, no one's ever going to know. If Brienne goes and somehow saves Sansa, which I don't know what form that will take, but no one will ever know that it was because Jaime kept an oath.
Yeah, just Brienne will know. He and Brienne will know, and I guess that's enough for him. His last chance at honor, I think, is now an internal thing.
But we did finally get the confirmation, which we'd always speculated, that ice was melted down to form the two swords that Tywin had forged, one of which is now Oathbreaker, and the other one is called Widow's Wail or something.
Yes, Widow's Wail. Good memory.
Hey, yeah, I should remember something.
I know, I was a little bit surprised. What a terrible, irreversible act against the Starks. I mean, that sword has been in their family for centuries. Well, but, I guess maybe they figure Sansa's the only one left to wield it, and she's not likely to become a warrior.
Give her a Valyrian steel sewing needle.
But the chapter...
Well, let me just say, I think there is one last chance for... Again, it all comes down to music. Music is a powerful tool in the realm. The Rains of Castamere is such a popular song and so ubiquitous that the first chord strikes fear into the heart of any listener. Yeah?
Yes.
So much.
It's what they use to kick off the Red Wedding.
We no longer need Castamere to lie in ruins. We can rebuild it and stick a Spicer in there. It doesn't matter because the Rains of Castamere is out there in the world. That's what Jaime needs to rebuild his honor. Get a whole posse of Simon Silvertongues to sing the song of Mad King Aerys, Wildfire, and good Sir Jaime saving the day, and then keeping his oath to save Sansa Stark, despite the fact she murdered his nephew.
And saving Brienne. He went back to save Brienne from the bear.
Over. I mean, just like you could have a whole... This could be like an epic song, and everyone would sing along to this. That's what he needs.
So many verses. Yes.
That's actually what our PR firm should focus on, I think, is the songs.
Oh, yeah. We could really help him out.
Yeah.
Our people should get in contact with his people, because I think we could do him some good here.
You know what? I've already thought of the title of one of my first songs I'm going to sell to one of my first clients. It's going to be called Giant of Lannister, and that's Tyrion.
Oh. So the chapter ends with Jaime writing a short summary of exploits, what he had been up to since he left King's Landing the last time. And, it's just a little blurb about the things that have happened. We know it's all been part of this story. And then he stares at, as you mentioned in the summary, 3/4 of still an empty page to go to fill this page. And he thinks to himself he can write whatever he wants. And one thing about George Martin's chapters is usually the last sentence or the last few lines are important. And this one doesn't seem to be, but I think what it's indicating is it's like him looking at this page, just 3/4 of a page left over, is a fresh start for his life. Like from here on, he can write it how he wants to write it. He can start over right now.
Yes, and also it's that same thing about I'm not leaving the Kingsguard. I'm not leaving the Kingsguard until I filled this page with my exploits.
Oh, that too. Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
That others have gone before him, have filled their page, and he hasn't done it yet, and he needs to for his own sanity.
Yeah.
All right.
That could very much be.
Why don't you provide us with some background information?
All right, I feel like I can do that. Well, there's been much alluding throughout the story and our episodes here to Tywin dealing harshly with House Rain and House Tarbeck, and there is a good deal of backstory leading up to what's known as the Rain-Tarbeck Rebellion that we just don't have time for today, because today was such a packed full talking points chapter. So I would like to get to it someday, but what I wanted to do today was explain why Castamere will require such a major makeover
Please.
when Rolf Spicer moves in. So when Tywin grew tired of the disrespect, young Tywin Lannister, still heir to Casterly Rock.
His father
when
was
he grew
Titus?
Yes, Titus, yes. When he grew tired of the disrespect shown to House Lannister under his father's weak leadership, he chose to make an example of two of the more brash Western houses, the Tarbecks and the Reynes. And due to a lot of political back and forth between the Lannisters and these vassal lords, the Reynes and Tarbecks renounced their fealty to the Lannisters. Now, without consulting his father, Tywin first marched on House Tarbeck with a host of several thousand strong. The Tarbecks were caught off guard and quickly fell to the larger force. The castle was then destroyed by catapults throwing huge boulders, and then it was set aflame. All the Tarbecks were either killed during the fighting or executed as captives. Lord Roger Rayne arrived at Tarbeck Hall with his host as the castle burned. Hoping to catch the Lannisters by surprise, he attacked. Unfortunately for Roger, the Lannister force quickly rallied and forced the Reynes to flee back to Castamere. There, Roger's son Reynard had the idea that they could hide in the safety of the mines, as there was no way that the Lannister force could follow them down there. However, there's one thing that could follow them down there, and that is water.
Mm-hmm.
So Tywin had all of the entrances to the mine blocked, and then had a river diverted into a mine entrance. None of the 300 men, women, and children ever emerged from those mines. And to make sure that any other Western houses with rebellious ideas learned a lesson, he then had the castle set to fire. And both Tarbeck Hall and Castamere are now just blackened, ruined, and crumbling reminders of the wrath of House Lannister under Tywin.
Exactly. Thank you, sir. So, comparison with the television show, I believe that the whole false Arya storyline was dropped entirely. I don't think that happened.
I don't recall it.
The whole Brienne and Jaime arc, I've said this several times, is skewed by the fact that they arrived when they were present when Joffrey died. I couldn't find any reference to these various attainders and pardons. We probably didn't need them because those because we're not POV bound. We could go and look. We could go and check in on Brynden Tully and find out where he is.
Right. Sure.
Jaime, just to show you how disparate all this has become, Jaime gives Oathkeeper to Brienne in season 4, episode 4, when then she leaves King's Landing. That scene is very similar to the book, by the way. But he has the scene in the White Sword Tower with Cersei in season 4, episode 9, which is a full 5 episodes later.
Oh, wow.
In
a big gap.
In a twist, she is the one that's more rash about their relationship at that point, and he is the one trying to talk her down from it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm holding a little bit back there in case it's a spoiler. The musing about the dagger doesn't happen, and show Jaime is not so bothered about defiling the White Sword Tower as book Jaime. He's quite okay with it, actually. So pedantry corner. I'm speculating here. I used to be more pedantic because it's been a while since I found any decent pedantry.
It has been a while. Our pedantry corner has been rather bare
We'll have to think
for a
about
while.
that.
Or maybe the editors are getting better as the story goes along.
Yeah.
There was one thing when Brienne started to compliment Jaime, and he said, "I got more ribs on my bones and less lice."
Yep.
And I was thinking, but he had his head shaved, so. But you can have body lice, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I assume you can have lice other places than just your head.
I have an interesting fact about lice for you. Head lice and pubic lice are two different animals. They're not the same.
Okay, good to know.
There's more to the story.
There's
that's
more.
Just
Okay,
the precursor. Hold your horses.
Okay.
Animals' DNA evolves at a certain rate. The difference in DNA between head lice and pubic lice gives us a very accurate time for when human beings stopped being hairy all over.
Oh, wow.
I know. I off off the cuff, I cannot remember the actual number, but it is. We have now a pretty good estimate of when we stopped being hairy all over because of the difference in DNA of head lice and pubic lice.
That is pretty fascinating.
I didn't say I was going to
propose.
I didn't say I was going to bore you with my story. I told you I was going to fascinate you.
I've proposed to you that we hold a science-based podcast, and these are the kind of things that we would put on such a show.
Kind of useless information I got at my fingertip. All right, do you have some news and notes?
We do have some news and notes. So we have 2 new Buy Me a Coffee sustainers that we want to give a shout out to. Rave and Richie have both joined the Squire tier.
Thank you, Rave. Thank you, Richie.
Thank you so much. Yes. And the Squire tier is primarily done as a donation since there's not really many perks to that tier. So thank you so much for your generosity in donating to our cause. It really means a great deal to us. And I just want to add that our GOH account follows Rave on Instagram, and she is really handy with a hula hoop.
Good to know.
I guess that's what it's a hoop. There's a lot of videos of Rave doing these dances with hula hoops in various locations, and they're quite impressive. So, yes, I applaud you, Rave. That's a very cool moves you got there.
Instagram.
Yes, that place.
Okay, I'll give it a check. All right. Thank you, Rave.
Yes.
Thank you, Richie. Appreciate it. And we have a cool new Ghosts of Harrenhal design from our good friend Dan. We've added it to some of our merch options. People on the Discord server have seen it and they seem to like it. At our Threadless site, ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, you can check out the new design and the new hoodies. It's mainly on hoodies, right? It looks really good on the hoodie.
So far, I'm planning on adding it to some other stuff.
Cool. Looks really good. All right, let's conclude this one. So I think the spice of Westling treachery is confirmed by this. Or that Tywin really is a player.
I had not considered this option.
I only thought of it as we talked about it, but it makes perfect sense. You know, if someone's betrayed you, then rewarding them makes it look like you were planning it. It's clever.
Yes,
clever as heck.
Yeah. It really does. Yeah. I like that idea. I bet if it wasn't true, Tywin would be like, I'm keeping that in my back pocket.
Exactly. Yeah, that whole drowning them in the mines took forever.
Oh gosh. The phrase. They also get rewarded.
We knew they were rotten. We had never any doubt about that.
You know, Davos, who Lord only knows what Davos has happened to Davos at this point, but he thought that the phrase would be cursed because of violating guest right.
Right.
But here they get rewarded with River Run. So, you know.
But they didn't get the Lord Paramount of the Trident. That's the curse.
That's true.
That's the curse coming back to bite
you.
And the Bolton get their rewards, and I'm using air quotes. As Brienne puts it, they're being paid with false coin, but they don't care. It doesn't matter.
No.
They know full well it's not the real Arya, but they're going to say she's Arya, and they're going to use that wedding to claim Winterfell and the North.
Absolutely. And like Jamie points out, there's not many left who knew young Arya Stark. First of all, she hasn't been in the North in a while.
Yeah.
When she left, she was a very little girl. So even if there were people that were like, yeah, I saw her once or twice, they, you know, who's going to say anything?
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah, I mean, especially when she's, you know, within earshot of Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah. Don't bring anything up at that point.
And Joffrey as the hire of the Catsport does make some sense, but it's not completely there for me. Again, it's that. How is the payoff work for him? Is he playing some really long game where he's imagining some far future deathbed scene where he finally reveals it to Robert and Robert says, "That's my boy"? No, that's not how it would work.
I wondered if maybe there was some off-camera scene where Joffrey told Robert what he did and Robert didn't say. We would not know because neither of them were POVs.
Robert turned to drink.
Yes. Yeah, because, I mean, he left town, so it's not like he got to witness it or take any credit for it. So, yeah, there is a bit of an issue there. And, oh boy, is Tywin going to be upset about the loss of this Valyrian steel sword.
Apoplectic is how I've phrased it, I think.
He's tried for so long to get a new Valyrian steel sword for House Lannister. And Jamie just gave it away. Just, here, you take this. Oh, that's great. Good stuff.
I'll say it's really good of Loras to give Brienne the benefit of the doubt. I'm glad that someone is able to listen to someone and base their opinion of that person on what they say, not what you thought in advance.
And like you said, I think so much of it comes down to Brienne's sincerity.
Yeah.
We've spent enough time around her to know that like she doesn't have a funny or like flippant bone in her body. She is all about honor and duty, and I think that eventually would come across to Loras too.
Yeah, and it's amazing of Jaime to try to protect Sansa, which he really is doing. I mean, he is arming and helping Brienne to protect Sansa. Maybe she'll never meet up with her, but he's doing all he can in the short term. Yeah, even though he believes that she killed Joffrey.
Could this be a bridge just a little too far for Jaime Lannister? Just from the guy who pushed Bran out a window without even really thinking about it, and still just such an awful person at the beginning of this book. He has become so hell-bent on holding up his honor.
Okay, let's look at it dispassionately for a second, right? It's protecting himself. They're both protecting himself. He had to push Bran out the window to protect his reputation because of what Bran had seen.
Right.
He has to protect Sansa because he made a promise, an oath, to Catelyn Stark that he would send Sansa back and would protect Sansa. And so he's trying... So in some ways, it's still looking out for number one.
Yeah, I guess so.
So maybe it's not that big of a journey. It is. It definitely is. And maybe he feels some guilt about Bran, you know?
Yeah, it's just all like a man who would push a little boy out of a tower window to now be so introspective and deep. I think that's one of the problems that Jenny has with Jaime is all of his development and changes and growth, which I really enjoy and appreciate. It all still funnels back to him pushing a little boy out of a window. Right,
but a year in a River-run cell would give you that introspection. Losing your hand to Vargo Hoat would also make you be a little bit more, you'd consider your actions and the consequences of them.
And he almost died from the infection from the wound.
Yeah. And as you said, what's happening on Dragonstone? Why is it so lightly garrisoned? Where's Stannis gone? Is he trying to get to Dawn to talk to the Martells?
Right.
Could be a good time. They might be ripe for insurrection.
And we know that Stannis does get word from Salador San's ships coming and going from King's Landing. So he might very well have heard about Oberyn Martell dying at the hands of Gregor Clegane.
Of course, it could cause a little bit of a problem if he arrives in Dawn, because they are thinking of crowning Myrcella as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, and then he would have to throw her onto a bonfire as soon as he arrived, and that's gonna...
That's true. Yeah, that's true. There's another bit of a conflict there, isn't there? I will say that, like losing Jorah last week, it seems that we might be losing Brienne now, unless she becomes a POV or runs into another POV if she's about to go off on a journey.
Maybe she does an amazing job of finding Sansa, and we pick her up in the next Sansa chapter.
That would do the trick. Yeah.
We got Jon next week, back to the Wall.
We do have Jon next week. Things were looking pretty grim for him on multiple levels.
Yes.
Last time.
When it seemed like he might be taking over at the Wall, a bunch of people arrived in who might take over and not be his friends.
Yes, he seemed like he might be...
it's worse than that. He's going to get hung, right?
He could be at the wrong end of a noose shortly. So we'll see how all that plays out.
Okay. There are 4 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review. You can buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, including the new logo. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal and become a sustainer at one of the many levels that are available to you, as Raven Ritchie have done. Thank you so much. You could donate directly to our cause through our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, keep up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, check out our cool new design that's been created for us by Dan. You could check us, and you can check it all out on our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghosts Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.